Amelia's point of view.
The chandeliers made everything look holy. That was the first lie. Light spilled from them in soft golden sheets, falling over the ballroom, over the towers of champagne glasses, over the white roses climbing the walls in perfect, expensive spirals. It touched the silver trays, the polished marble, the smiling guests, and made the Mitchell mansion glow like something blessed. People always believed beautiful things were good. I knew better. I stood near the entrance of the ballroom, with a smile fixed so tightly on my face that my cheeks had gone numb. My dress was pale blue silk, chosen by Amelia Mitchell because she said the color made me look soft enough to forgive. My hair had been curled, pinned, sprayed, and arranged until I looked less like a woman and more like a doll someone had placed beside the grand staircase. A wife. A mother. A Mitchell. The guests saw exactly what they were meant to see. Logan stood across the room, laughing with a senator and his wife, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other wrapped loosely around a glass of champagne. He looked flawless, of course he did. Logan Mitchell had built an entire career on looking flawless. Host of The Power of Choice, face of breakthrough moments, the man who held strangers' hands on television and told them they were stronger than their suffering. People cried when he spoke. Women adored him. Men trusted him. And I once had loved him. The thought slid through me like a dull knife. Amelia? Frank Mitchell's voice found me before his hand did. His fingers closed around my elbow, hard enough to bruise, though his smile remained warm for the guests passing by. I turned my head slightly. Yes? You're standing like a corpse, he muttered, still smiling. This is your son's birthday, not a funeral. Act grateful. My sons. Across the ballroom, Noah and Elias stood beside the cake table in matching navy suits, 6 years old today. Beautiful boys with golden hair, solemn blue eyes, and faces that made the guests coo as if they were little princes. They should have been running, laughing, smearing frosting on each other's cheeks. Instead, they stood perfectly still, while Evelyn adjusted their collars for the third time. I watched Elias glance toward me. The second our eyes met, he looked away. Something inside me twisted, but it was old pain, dull from overuse. I did not know what to do with those boys. I never had. From the moment they had placed them in my arms, red-faced and screaming, I had felt nothing except terror. No joy. No miracle. Only the heavy, sickening knowledge that the Mitchell family had gotten exactly what they wanted from me. 2 heirs. 2 little chains. You heard me, Frank said, squeezing harder. I pulled my arm away slowly. I'm smiling. Then smile better. He left before I could answer. I stared at the place where his fingers had been. The skin was already reddening. By morning there would be marks. There were always marks somewhere. On my arms, on my pride. On the parts of me no one could see. Darling. Evelyn glided toward me, elegant in silver, her diamonds flashing coldly against her throat. She kissed the air beside my cheek. You look tired, she said. I am tired. Her smile sharpened. Then stop looking it. I looked at her. She leaned closer, her perfume flooding my lungs. The photographers are still here. If even one picture of you looking miserable reaches the wrong gossip page, I promise you, Amelia, I will make sure you regret it. I almost laughed. Regret. As if my life had room for more. Before I could reply, Logan appeared beside us. His hand settled at the small of my back. Light enough to look affectionate, firm enough to guide. There you are, he said warmly. Not to me. To the couple approaching us. Amelia has been hiding all evening, he continued, drawing me closer. She gets emotional on the boys' birthdays. The senator's wife placed a jeweled hand over her chest. Oh, of course, a mother's heart. A mother's heart. I wondered where mine had gone. Logan's thumb pressed once into my spine, a warning. So I smiled. I smiled while people congratulated us on our beautiful family. I smiled while they praised Logan for balancing fame, business, and fatherhood. I smiled while women told me how lucky I was, how blessed, how proud I must be. Lucky, blessed, proud. The words became little stones in my throat. The cake was brought out just after 9, 3 tiers, white and gold, with tiny sugar airplanes circling the top because Noah had once said he liked pilots. Or maybe it had been Elias. I could never remember which interest belonged to which child. That failure had been added to the long list of things I hated about myself. Everyone gathered. Logan lifted one boy in each arm, laughing as if he had spent the last 6 years being a devoted father, instead of a polished ghost who kissed their foreheads only when cameras were nearby. The guests sang. Noah looked at the candles. Elias looked at me. There was a question in his eyes, small and careful. Are you coming closer? I did not move. His face closed. The song ended. The boys blew out the candles together. Applause filled the room, bright and meaningless. I clapped too. My palms made no sound. After cake, the party loosened into liquor and murmured deals. The children were led upstairs by the nanny. Logan disappeared into a circle of men near the terrace doors. Frank smoked a cigar beneath the no-smoking sign because rules were things he purchased for other people. Evelyn inspected the dessert table like a queen surveying conquered land. No one looked at me. That was how I knew it was time. I slipped out through the side hall, past the powder room, past the framed photographs of Mitchell men shaking hands with presidents, governors, billionaires. Their eyes followed me from the walls. I reached the narrow corridor behind the kitchens and found Clara waiting in the shadows. She was Logan's sister-in-law, married to his younger brother, Marcus. Too quiet for that family, too kind to survive among them untouched. Her brown hair was pulled into a low bun, and her face was pale with fear. "You're sure?" she whispered. "No?" "Yes." Her eyes searched mine. "Amelia, if they find out I helped you..." "They won't." That was another lie, and we both knew it. Clara swallowed and pressed something cold into my palm. "Keys." My fingers closed around them. "The black sedan is near the service gate," she said quickly. "I told the guard Marcus needed it moved out. He won't question you if you keep your head down. The gate code is already entered. Just drive." Drive. The word almost made me smile. I barely knew how. Logan had hated the idea of me having independence, even the small kind that came with a steering wheel. I had been allowed lessons years ago, before the wedding, before love became a trap. Since then, cars had been things I sat inside while other people decided where I was going. Clara saw the truth on my face. "You can do this," she said. Could I? I looked back toward the ballroom. Music drifted through the walls, laughter, glasses clinking. My sons were upstairs, probably in their matching pajamas, probably whispering to each other in the dark, the way they did when they thought no one could hear. A mother would have gone to them. A good woman would have kissed their foreheads and promised to become better. But I was so tired. I was tired in my bones, tired in my blood, tired in places prayer could not reach. "Thank you," I whispered. Clara's eyes filled. "Where will you go?" I looked at the keys in my hand. Away, I thought. But there was no away from the Mitchells, not in this city, not with their money, their lawyers, their careful smiles. If I ran, they would find me. If I spoke, they would bury me. If I begged, they would laugh. So I said nothing. Clara stepped forward suddenly and hugged me. For one impossible second, I froze. Then I let her. Her arms were warm, human, gentle. It almost changed my mind. Almost. I pulled away before kindness could make me weak. The service hall smelled of bleach and roasted meat. I walked quickly, keeping my head down as Clara had instructed. No one stopped me. The staff were too busy cleaning the ruins of perfection. Outside, the night air touched my skin, cool and damp. For the first time all evening, I could breathe. The sedan waited near the service gate, black and sleek beneath the security lights. I climbed inside with trembling hands. The interior smelled of leather and cedar, masculine and unfamiliar. The dashboard glowed like a cockpit. For a moment, I only sat there. My reflection stared back from the dark windshield. Beautiful Amelia Mitchell. Poor Amelia Mitchell. Empty Amelia Mitchell. I pressed the start button. The engine purred awake. The gate opened. No alarm sounded. No one ran after me. No voice shouted my name. I drove forward. Slowly at first, both hands locked around the wheel, my shoulders stiff, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The long driveway stretched ahead, lined with perfect hedges and small lights buried in the grass like trapped stars. Then the mansion began to shrink behind me. The farther I went, the stranger my body felt. Lighter, looser, as if every inch between me and that house was peeling away another layer of skin. At the main road, I turned without knowing where it led. The city lights blurred through my tears. I laughed once, a broken, ugly sound. I was free. For 1 minute. For one road. For one breath. Then my hands began to shake harder. The lane curved ahead, headlights flashed in the distance. I tried to slow down, but my foot moved clumsily, panic making everything unfamiliar. The car jerked. The wheels slipped beneath my damp palms. No, I whispered. The road bent too sharply. The world became light and horn and screaming tires. For one suspended heartbeat, I saw the trees rushing toward me, black branches opening like arms. Then metal screamed. Glass burst. And the night swallowed me whole.
Rhea's point of view.
The dirt never really left my hands. No matter how hard I scrubbed, no matter how much soap I wasted, there was always a thin brown line buried under my nails. Proof of where I came from. Proof of the life I lived. A life that bent your back, split your skin, and still demanded you get up before the sun the next morning. By the time I finished loading the last crate, my arms were shaking so badly, I had to lean against the side of my father's old truck just to stay upright. The metal was hot from sitting in the sun all day. It burned through my shirt, but I didn't move. I pressed my forehead against it and closed my eyes, breathing through the ache in my shoulders, my spine, my thighs. Rhea. I opened my eyes. Mr. Collins stood by the barn doors with his clipboard tucked under one arm. He was already counting money with the other hand, licking his thumb between each bill like he was doing me a favor. "You coming tomorrow?" he called. Tomorrow. The word almost made me laugh. My body was screaming. My palms were torn open in 2 places. There was a sharp pinch in my lower back that had started sometime after noon and had not stopped since. But tomorrow meant more money. More money meant 1 step closer to the transplant. 1 step closer to keeping my father alive. "I'll be here," I said. Mr. Collins nodded like he had expected nothing less and held out the folded bills. I walked over and took them. $40 less than he promised. I counted it twice. "This isn't right," I said quietly. He sighed, already bored. "Had to deduct for the crates you dropped." "I dropped 1 crate. And it bruised the tomatoes." I stared at him. He stared back. There were things I wanted to say, things that burned on my tongue and filled my chest with heat. But anger did not pay hospital bills. Pride did not buy medicine. So I folded the money and put it in my pocket. "Yes, sir," I said. He smiled like he had won something. Maybe he had. I climbed into the truck, shut the door, sat there for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. The cracked leather scratched my palms. The cab smelled like dust, motor oil, and the faint peppermint gum my father used to chew whenever he drove me to school. Before the sickness. Before doctors began using soft voices. Before time became something I could hear running out. Final stage liver cancer. 8 weeks, maybe less, unless there was a transplant. I had heard the doctor clearly, but some part of me still refused to understand it. My father was the strongest person I knew. He could fix a roof in the rain, carry 2 sacks of feed over one shoulder, and laugh with his whole chest. Men like that were not supposed to shrink into hospital beds. They were not supposed to cough blood into napkins and pretend it was nothing. I started the engine. The truck coughed, shuddered, then growled awake. "Come on, old man," I whispered, patting the dashboard. "Just get me home." The drive back to the house was quiet, except for the rattling of the truck and the hum of insects in the fields. The sun had dropped low, staining the sky orange and red, turning the dirt road into a ribbon of fire. Normally, this was when I thought of him. Logan Mitchell. It was foolish. I knew it was foolish. A woman like me had no business dreaming about a man like him. He existed on screens, in tailored suits, beneath studio lights, smiling at people who had money to lose and time to cry about it. But every night, when I came home sore and filthy and scared, I turned on our little television, adjusted the antenna, and waited for his face to appear. The power of choice. Breakthrough moments. He had a voice that made pain sound temporary. He looked into the camera like he could see you sitting there in the dark, holding yourself together with nothing but stubbornness. Sometimes I imagined sitting in that audience. Sometimes I imagined him turning toward me and saying, "Rhea Freya, you are stronger than what broke you." It was stupid. But hope was allowed to be stupid when it was all you had. The truck bounced over a rut, jolting me back into my body. I winced and tightened my grip on the wheel. Home came into view a few minutes later. A small wooden house with a sagging porch, chipped paint, and a roof that needed patching before the next hard rain. It wasn't much, but it was ours. My father had built half of it with his own hands. Every crooked board had his stubbornness in it. Then I saw the car. My foot eased off the gas. A shiny blue sedan sat in front of the house, looking too clean for our yard. The trunk was still open. 3 people were walking down the porch steps, laughing like they had just left a party. My stomach tightened. My father's family. Not the kind of family that showed up with soup, or prayers, or money for medicine. No, these were the kind who vanished when work needed doing, and appeared when there was something to take. Aunt Marlene saw me first. Her smile spread slowly, sweet as syrup, and twice as sticky. "Well, look at you," she called as I parked, "working yourself into the ground again." I climbed out of the truck, my legs stiff. "What are you doing here?" Her eyebrows lifted. "Is that any way to greet family?" Family. The word sat between us like something rotten. Behind her, my cousin Darius shut the trunk too quickly. His wife looked away, suddenly fascinated by the dust on her shoes. I looked from their faces to the house. "Where's my father?" Aunt Marlene pressed a hand to her chest. "We thought he might be home from the hospital. We came to check on him." "You haven't checked on him in months." Her smile thinned. Darius cleared his throat. "We got places to be." I took a step forward. Wait. But they were already moving. Aunt Marlene reached out and patted my cheek like I was still 10 years old and too small to fight back. "Don't look so hard at the world, baby," she said softly. "It'll make you ugly." Then she climbed into the car. The engine started. Music blasted so loud the windows shook. They pulled away from the house in a cloud of dust, laughing as if they had not left something cold and wrong behind them. I stood there until their taillights disappeared down the road. Then I ran inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My bag slipped from my shoulder and hit the floor. I barely noticed. I went straight to the corner of my room, dropped to my knees, and pulled back the old rug. My fingers found the loose floorboard instantly. I had lifted it so many times that I could have done it blind. "Please. Please, God. Please." I pried it open and reached inside. The box was gone. For 1 second, my mind went blank. Then I saw it pushed farther back, tipped on its side. I grabbed it, ripped open the lid, and stared. Empty. Not low. Not missing some. Empty. The sound that came out of me did not feel human. I dumped the box onto the floor, as if the money might be hiding in the corners. Nothing fell out except a folded scrap of paper, where I had written numbers over and over again. Hospital deposit, medication, transport to the city, transplant consultation. Every dollar had a purpose. Every dollar had come from blood, sweat, hunger, and nights when I worked until my vision blurred. I had skipped meals for that money. I had walked to town to save gas for that money. I had smiled at men like Mr. Collins while they robbed me in daylight for that money. And they had taken it. My father's life. They had taken my father's life and driven away laughing. I don't remember standing. I don't remember grabbing the keys. One moment I was on the floor with the empty box in my hands. The next I was back in the truck, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. "No," I said, but it came out as a sob. "No, no, no." The engine protested when I turned the key. "Come on," I screamed. It caught. I threw the truck into gear and tore down the road after them. Dust flew behind me. Tears blurred the windshield. I wiped them away with the back of my hand, but more came, hot and endless. "You can't do this," I shouted into the empty cab. "That money was for him." The truck picked up speed, shaking harder than usual. Something under the hood knocked in a way I didn't like, but I pressed the gas anyway. I saw their taillights ahead. Red. Small. Escaping. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Give it back," I whispered. Then louder. "Give it back." The road curved near the old olive grove. I knew that bend. Everyone knew that bend. You had to slow down before it or the gravel would pull you sideways. I hit the brake. The pedal sank too easily. Nothing happened. Cold fear cut through the rage. I pumped the brake again. Still nothing. No. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. The whole truck shuddered violently, veering toward the shoulder. I tried to correct it, but the tires skidded over loose gravel, and suddenly the road was no longer beneath me the way it should have been. The olive tree appeared in the headlights. Massive. Ancient. Unmoving. I gripped the wheel with both hands and screamed. Not for myself. For my father. His face filled my mind. His tired smile. His warm hand on my head when I was little. His voice telling me, "You and me, baby girl. We'll make it somehow." "I'm sorry," I cried. Then the tree rushed forward. The world exploded into metal, glass and pain. And my father's name broke apart on my tongue as everything went dark. Heaven smelled like lilies. That was my first thought. Not smoke, not blood, not hot metal wrapped around my legs, not the sharp stink of gasoline spilling into dirt. Lilies. Clean sheets. Something sweet and expensive floating in the air like perfume. For a while, I did not open my eyes. I was afraid that if I did, the pain would come back. I remembered the olive tree. I remembered the headlights swallowing bark. I remembered screaming my father's name until the crash tore the sound away from me. Then nothing. If this was death, it was softer than I expected. There was a steady beeping somewhere close by. A machine breathed quietly at my side. The bed beneath me felt too smooth, too wide, too clean. No springs digging into my hip, no rough blanket smelling of sun and dust, no cracked window letting in mosquitoes. I was not in my room. I was not in my truck. I was not on the road. My heart began to pound. I opened my eyes. White ceiling, soft yellow light, curtains the color of cream, a vase of flowers so large it looked like it belonged in a wedding. The room was bigger than the entire front half of my house. There was a sofa near the wall, a polished table with bottled water arranged in neat rows, and a flat-screen television mounted across from the bed. A hospital, but not any hospital I had ever seen. No crowded hallways, no babies crying through thin walls, no nurses rushing past with tired eyes and worn shoes. This room was quiet enough to hear my own breathing. I tried to move. Pain answered from everywhere. My ribs, my shoulder, my head, my leg. I sucked in a breath. and even that hurt. Don't. The voice came from the foot of the bed. My body froze. A man stood near the window, half turned away from me, his tall shape outlined by the pale morning light pushing through the curtains. He wore a dark suit without a wrinkle in it, his hair perfect, his posture calm. I knew that voice. I had heard it through our old television speakers so many nights that it had become part of my survival. It had filled our kitchen while I washed my father's medicine cups. It had followed me into sleep after long days in the field. My throat tightened. He turned. Logan Mitchell. For one breath, the whole world stopped. He was more beautiful in person. That was the ridiculous thought that came first, before fear, before confusion, before pain. His jaw was sharper than it looked on television. His eyes were colder, but I told myself it was only the light. He looked like the kind of man heaven would send to welcome broken women home. A sound escaped me, half laugh, half sob. Logan? His expression did not soften. Not even a little. You're awake, he said. I stared at him, waiting for warmth, waiting for that gentle tilt of his head, that famous look of concern he gave people on the power of choice, right before telling them their pain mattered. It never came. Instead, he glanced at his watch. I'll call the doctor. My smile died before it reached my mouth. Where am I? I whispered. My voice was wrong. I stopped breathing. It was not my voice. The words had come out soft, light, unfamiliar. Not rough from dust and shouting. Not mine. Logan's jaw tightened. In the hospital. I swallowed. My tongue felt too big. My mouth too dry. What hospital? He looked at me then, really looked, and irritation crossed his face like a shadow. Amelia, he said, each syllable clipped. Don't do this. Amelia. The name hit me harder than the crash. I tried to sit up. Pain tore through me, but fear was stronger. Tubes tugged at my hand. Something beeped faster beside me. My name isn't Amelia, I said. Logan closed his eyes for a second, as if I had inconvenienced him. The door opened before he could answer. A doctor came in first, followed by a nurse and two older people dressed like they belonged in one of those magazines rich women left on coffee tables. The man had silver hair and a face carved out of judgment. The woman wore pearls and a cream coat, her mouth pressed into a line so tight it looked painful. Behind them stood another man, younger than Logan, with the same expensive bones and uneasy eyes. Everyone looked at me. No one looked relieved. That was when the first crack of real fear opened inside me. Mrs. Mitchell, the doctor said gently, coming to my side. Can you hear me? Mrs. Mitchell. I stared at him. He shined a light in my eyes, asked me to follow his finger, asked if I knew the date, asked if I remembered the accident. The accident. The tree. The money. My father. I grabbed his sleeve with my free hand. My father, I said. Where is my father? The doctor blinked. Your father? Yes. My voice shook. That strange, soft voice that did not belong to me. Daniel Freya. He's sick. He's at the county hospital. Please, I need to call him. I need to know if he... The older woman inhaled sharply. Oh, for heaven's sake. I looked at her. She stepped closer, diamonds flashing at her ears. Enough, Amelia. You have already caused this family enough embarrassment for one night. Embarrassment. I had driven into a tree. I did not know where my father was. I did not know why my voice sounded like another woman's. And this woman was worried about embarrassment. The older man gave the doctor a hard look. Is this head trauma? It could be temporary disorientation, the doctor said carefully. Memory confusion after impact isn't unusual. I am not confused, I said, though everything inside me was breaking apart. My name is Rhea Freya. The room went still. Logan's eyes sharpened. The older man's face darkened. The woman's hand tightened around her purse. The younger man shifted uncomfortably by the door. "Rhea Freya," I repeated, because saying it felt like holding on to the last piece of myself. "I live on Miller's Road, near the old olive grove. My father is Daniel Freya. He has liver cancer. I was chasing my aunt because she stole—" "Stop," Logan's voice cut through mine. I flinched. Not because he shouted. He didn't. That made it worse. He walked closer to the bed slowly, like he was approaching a stranger who had broken into his house wearing his wife's skin. "Whatever this is," he said under his breath, "whatever performance you think will punish me, end it now." "Punish him?" I stared at him, unable to understand. "I don't know you," I whispered. His mouth twisted, almost like a smile, but there was no humor in it. "That would be convenient, wouldn't it?" The older man stepped forward. "Logan, don't indulge her." "I'm not," Logan said. The doctor cleared his throat. "Perhaps it would be best if Mrs. Mitchell had some rest. Trauma can cause—" "I need a mirror," I said. No one moved. "I need a mirror," I repeated, louder. The nurse hesitated. Then, maybe because she was the only person in the room who remembered I was still a patient, she picked up a small hand mirror from the bedside drawer and held it out. My fingers trembled when I took it. I looked down first. At my hand. It was not mine. The fingers were long and delicate, nails shaped and polished in a soft nude color. The skin was light, almost translucent beneath the blue veins near the wrist. No calluses, no cuts from crates, no dirt buried beneath the nails. I turned my wrist over. A diamond wedding ring caught the light. My breath came too fast. "No," I whispered. I lifted the mirror. A stranger stared back. Blonde hair tangled around bandages, blue eyes wide with horror, a bruised cheek, a split lip, a face so beautiful it looked unreal, even broken. Not my round brown face. Not my dark eyes. Not the woman who had loaded crates until her back burned. Not Rhea. The mirror slipped from my hand and hit the blanket. "No," I said again, but the word had no strength left in it. The machine beside me began to beep faster. The nurse moved toward me. "Mrs. Mitchell, try to breathe." "I'm not her." Tears blurred the stranger's face in the mirror. "I'm not her." The older woman stepped back as if madness were contagious. Frank Mitchell, I knew him now from photographs beside Logan on television charity stages, turned to the doctor. "Sedate her if you need to. We cannot have this spreading." Spreading. Like I was a stain. Logan did not look at his father. He kept watching me, and for the first time I saw something beneath his anger. Not concern. Suspicion. "Everyone out," he said. The doctor objected. Evelyn objected. Frank muttered something about lawyers and reputation, but Logan's voice hardened, and one by one they left until only he remained. The door closed. Silence fell. He came to the side of the bed. I shrank back, though there was nowhere to go. "Listen carefully," he said. "You crashed my car. You humiliated this family. You disappeared from our son's birthday party, and nearly turned yourself into tomorrow morning's scandal. If pretending not to know who you are is your newest way of avoiding consequences, it won't work. Our sons." The words barely reached me. I looked at him through tears. "My father is dying," I said. "Please. I don't know what happened, but I need to call him. I need to know if he's alive." Something moved across Logan's face. Annoyance. Then nothing. "You should worry about your own children for once," he said. The sentence landed between us, cruel and heavy. Before I could answer, he turned away and reached for his phone. I looked down at the hands folded over the hospital blanket. Amelia's hands. Amelia's ring. Amelia's body. The room tilted around me, all flowers and silk and money and lies. I had thought I woke in heaven, but heaven would have known my name. Heaven would have cared that my father was dying. I closed my unfamiliar eyes and finally understood the truth pressing its cold mouth against my ear. I had not died on that road. I had woken up inside another woman's life. And that woman belonged to Logan Mitchell.
Amelia's point of view.
Pain brought me back. Not gently. It dragged me up by the throat through darkness and noise, until I surfaced inside a body that felt as if it had been broken open and put together by someone careless. My head throbbed, my ribs burned, my mouth tasted like copper and medicine. Somewhere close, a woman was crying. Somewhere farther away, someone coughed wetly into the air. Machines beeped without rhythm, rubber soles squeaked against the floor. A baby wailed behind a curtain. I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me was stained yellow around the edges. For a moment, I did not understand what I was seeing. There were no silk curtains, no private suite, no quiet nurse waiting with a glass of water, no expensive flowers arranged by Evelyn for photographers to notice, no Logan standing in the corner with his perfect jaw clenched, preparing to punish me with silence. Instead, I lay beneath a thin blanket in a narrow hospital bed separated from the rest of the room by a faded blue curtain. The air smelled of bleach, sweat, sickness, and old coffee. A television mounted high in the corner played a game show no one was watching. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, harsh and unforgiving. This was not one of the Mitchell hospitals. This was not anywhere a Mitchell would have allowed me to be seen. I tried to sit up. Pain tore through my side so sharply that I gasped and fell back against the pillow. A nurse pushed the curtain aside. She was round-faced, tired, and holding a plastic cup with a straw. "Oh, good," she said. "You're awake." My throat scraped when I spoke. "Where am I?" "County Clinic." She came closer and checked the monitor beside me. "You were in a bad crash, honey. You're lucky somebody found you when they did." County Clinic. The words made no sense. "Call my husband," I said. The nurse paused. "Your husband?" "Yes," my patience came out cracked and weak. "Logan Mitchell, tell him Amelia is awake." Her brows pulled together. "Amelia?" A cold feeling slid down my spine. I looked at her carefully. Amelia Miller-Mitchell. The nurse's expression changed in the way people's faces changed when they decided not to argue with the unstable. "Okay," she said softly. Too softly. "Let's take it easy for a minute." "Don't speak to me like that, huh?" She set the cup on the tray. "Do you know your name?" I stared at her. The question was absurd. Insulting. "Amelia." She looked down at the chart in her hand. "No, sweetheart," she said. "Your name is Rhea Freya." The room tilted. For one suspended second, all the noise around me seemed to fade. The crying woman, the coughing, the television, the buzzing light. Rhea. I did not know that name. It belonged to no one in my world. Not a guest, not a servant, not a charity case Evelyn had paraded through one of her luncheons. It was rougher than the names I knew. Earthier. Like something that had grown in soil instead of marble. "You're mistaken," I whispered. The nurse gave me a look full of practiced kindness. Confusion can happen after trauma. I am not confused. "Rhea." "Do not call me that." My voice rose, thin and unfamiliar. That was when I heard it. Not my voice. Not Amelia Mitchell's carefully trained, soft society voice. Not the voice Logan had once said sounded good in interviews, because it made people trust me. This voice was deeper, warmer, raw at the edges. My heart began to hammer. I lifted my hands. And the world stopped again. They were not mine. The hands resting on the blanket were dark brown, strong, and roughened by work. The nails were short, uneven, edged with dirt that had settled into places soap could not easily reach. There were small cuts across the knuckles, faint scars near the wrists. The palms were marked with calluses, thick and hardened, as if these hands had spent years gripping wood, rope, metal, tools, survival. My own hands had always been soft. Worthless things, Evelyn once said. Good only for rings and photographs. These hands had lived. I turned them over slowly, horror blooming hot and wild inside me. No, I breathed. The nurse reached for my shoulder. Honey, try to stay calm. I jerked away from her touch. Bring me a mirror. Rhea? A mirror. The curtain snapped back again, and another nurse appeared, younger, alarmed. She's agitated, the first nurse said. I am not agitated, I said, though I was shaking so violently, the blanket trembled over my knees. I want a mirror. The younger nurse hesitated, then pulled a compact from the pocket of her scrubs. Just for a second, okay? I snatched it from her. For a moment, I could not make myself look. I stared at the silver case in my trembling hands, and thought of the last thing I remembered. The ballroom, Clara's frightened face, the keys in my palm, the black road opening before me. Freedom. Then the headlights, the curve, the trees rushing closer. Impact. I opened the compact. A stranger stared back at me. She was beautiful. That was the cruelest part. A beautiful black woman with warm brown skin, dark eyes wide with terror, and thick black hair pushed back messily from her face. There was swelling along one cheek, a split at her lower lip, and a bandage near her temple. But beneath the bruises, beneath the exhaustion, there was strength in her features. A kind of unpolished dignity that made me ache with envy and fear all at once. This was not my face. I touched her cheek. She touched hers. I screamed. The compact fell from my hand and struck the floor. The nurses moved quickly then. One caught my wrists. The other pressed a button near the bed. No, I sobbed. No, this isn't me. This isn't my body. You are in an accident, the older nurse said. You're disoriented. My name is Amelia Mitchell. I need you to breathe. I am Logan Mitchell's wife. That made them exchange a glance. A doctor came in minutes later. He smelled like coffee and antiseptic, and his coat was wrinkled at the sleeves. He asked questions I refused to answer. He shined a light into eyes that did not belong to me. He told the nurses to monitor me for post-traumatic confusion. No one believed me. Of course they didn't. Why would they? If a poor, injured woman woke up in a county clinic, claiming to be married to one of the most famous men in the country, what else would they call it except madness? I pressed my face into my hands and tried not to fall apart. But even my tears felt foreign on this skin. The curtain opened again. Baby girl? The voice was weak. Everything in me went still. An older man stood on the other side of the curtain, one hand gripping an ivy pole, a clear tube running beneath his nose. He was thin in a way that illness makes a person thin, as if the sickness had been eating him slowly from the inside. His shoulders stooped beneath a hospital robe, and his eyes were sunken with exhaustion. But when he saw me, those eyes filled with tears. Real tears. Not Evelyn's polished performance, not Logan's camera-ready concern, not the neat sympathy of people who wanted credit for feeling something. Relief broke across his face like sunrise. Rhea, he whispered. I could not speak. The nurses hurried toward him. Mr. Freya, you shouldn't be out of bed. She's awake, he said, as if that answered everything. His hand trembled as he came closer. Every step looked painful. Every breath cost him. Still, he reached my bed and lowered himself into the chair beside me like he would have crawled there if he had needed to. Then he took my hand. Both of his closed around it. Careful, reverent. As if I were precious. The touch undid me more completely than fear had. My girl, he said, voice breaking. I thought I lost you. I stared at his hands wrapped around mine. No one had ever held me like that after I survived something. When I gave birth to the twins, Logan kissed my forehead in front of the photographer and left to take a call. Evelyn complained that I looked dreadful in the first pictures. Frank said heirs were worth the trouble. When I was sick, they brought specialists. When I cried, they brought warnings. This man brought nothing but himself. "I'm sorry," he said, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I should have been there. You shouldn't have had to carry all this alone." I looked at him, this dying stranger who loved a daughter I was not, and something inside me cracked. "I'm not," I began, but the words would not come. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. "You're here," he whispered. "That's enough." Enough. I had never been enough. Not as a wife, not as a mother, not as a daughter-in-law, not even as a woman standing quietly in a ballroom while everyone decided what shape her smile should take. But Rhea Freya opened her eyes in a county clinic, bruised and broken, and this man wept because the world had returned her to him. I turned my face away before he could see what his love had done to me. Outside the curtain, someone laughed. A cart rattled past. The clinic remained loud, crowded, and ugly. Yet his hand stayed around mine. Warm, steady, as if he had no intention of letting go. And for the first time since waking in this unfamiliar body, I wondered if hell was not always made of noise and sickness and cracked ceilings. Sometimes hell had chandeliers. Sometimes it wore diamonds. Sometimes it called itself home.
Rhea's point of view.
By the time they released me, I had learned that rich pain came with better paperwork. A private doctor signed forms. A nurse adjusted the sling around my shoulder. Logan spoke to everyone except me. Frank Mitchell made 2 calls in the hallway, both about controlling the story. Evelyn complained that the hospital should have used a side exit. No one asked if I was afraid. No one asked what I remembered. No one believed my name was Rhea. So I stopped saying it. Not because I accepted their lie, but because every time I fought, their faces closed tighter, and I could almost hear the word passing between them. Unstable. The drive to the Mitchell mansion was silent. I sat in the back seat beside Evelyn because she insisted the photographers might still be near the hospital entrance, and it would look unkind if Logan sat too far from his injured wife. Logan drove with one hand on the wheel, his wedding ring catching the light whenever we passed beneath a street lamp. The ring on my own hand felt too heavy. I stared out the window and tried not to think of my father. Daniel Freya. Was he awake? Had anyone told him about the crash? Did he know his daughter was gone, even if her body was still breathing somewhere? My throat tightened. "Don't start crying," Evelyn said without looking at me. "Your face is already swollen enough." I turned toward her slowly. She wore pearl earrings and a soft gray coat, her perfume filling the car like a warning. "Excuse me?" Her mouth tightened. "There's no need to be dramatic." Logan's eyes flicked to me in the rearview mirror. "Amelia." That one word carried a command. Be quiet. Behave. Disappear. I looked away before either of them saw the hatred rising in me. For years I had watched Logan Mitchell tell strangers to choose courage. I had believed him. I had sat in our little house with my father asleep in the next room, letting Logan's voice convince me that goodness could wear a suit and speak softly. Now the real man sat less than 3 feet away, and there was no warmth in him at all. The car slowed. Iron gates opened ahead of us. For one shameful second, I forgot to breathe. The Mitchell mansion rose beyond the long driveway like something built out of power. White stone walls, tall windows glowing gold, a fountain spilling silver water beneath the moon. The gardens were trimmed so perfectly they looked unreal. The whole place seemed too grand to belong to people who still got hungry, still bled, still died. If I had seen it on television, I would have thought, that must be happiness. The car stopped at the front steps. A man in a black uniform opened my door. I climbed out carefully, every bruise complaining. The night air smelled of rain, flowers, and money. My borrowed legs trembled under me, weaker than I wanted them to be. Inside, the house was even worse. Marble floors stretched beneath a crystal chandelier. A staircase curved upward with polished railings. Oil paintings watched from the walls. Everything shone. Everything whispered that nothing ugly was allowed to live here. Then I saw the staff. They stood near the hallway in a stiff little line, watching me with faces trained into obedience. A few lowered their eyes quickly. One older maid pressed her lips together, as if she wanted to speak but knew better. At the far end of the foyer, a woman with brown hair and a low bun stepped forward. "Amelia," she said softly. There was real concern in her voice. It startled me. Before I could answer, Evelyn cut in. "Clara, not now. She needs rest, not encouragement." Clara's eyes moved over my face, searching. "She looks terrible." "I can hear you," I said. Clara blinked. So did everyone else. Apparently, Amelia Mitchell did not answer back. Frank came down the stairs, buttoning his cuff, as if my return had interrupted something more important. He looked at me once, then at Logan. "Is she finished with the performance?" My hands curled at my sides. Logan shut the door behind us. "For now." Frank turned his cold eyes on me. "Good. Then she can start in the kitchen." I thought I had misheard him. "The kitchen?" I repeated. Evelyn sighed. "Frank, she just came from the hospital." "She was well enough to run out of her son's birthday party and put a car into a ditch," Frank said. "She is well enough to clean the mess she created." The staff went still. A strange silence filled the foyer. Not shock exactly. Expectation. As if this was not the first time cruelty had dressed itself up as discipline. I looked from Frank to Logan, waiting for the objection that never came. Logan only rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Amelia, don't make this harder." Something hot rose in my chest. I had cleaned kitchens before. I had scrubbed floors after 12 hours in the fields. I had washed my father's clothes by hand when the machine broke and boiled water when the pipes froze. Work had never frightened me. But this was not work. This was humiliation. "Are you serious?" I asked. Frank's face hardened. Evelyn inhaled sharply. One of the maids dropped her gaze to the floor. Logan stepped closer. "Enough." "No," I said, and the word came out before I could stop it. "Not enough. I was in a crash. I have stitches. I can barely stand." Frank's smile was small and ugly. "Then perhaps next time, you'll think before embarrassing this family." Clara moved beside me. "Frank, stop." He ignored her. Logan's voice lowered. "Go to the kitchen, Amelia." There it was again. That tone. The one that expected fear to do the rest of the work. I wanted to tell him that I had faced worse men than him. Men who counted my wages wrong because they knew I needed every dollar. Men who looked at my father's sickness and saw opportunity. Men who believed poverty made a woman easier to bend. But I was not in my body. I was inside a stranger's life, surrounded by people who could lock me away with one phone call and call it medical concern. So I did not shout. I did not obey either. I simply stood there. The longer I stood, the heavier the silence became. Frank's nostrils flared. Evelyn stared as though I had slapped her. Logan's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since I had woken in that hospital room, I saw something like uncertainty pass through him. Clara touched my elbow gently. "She needs to lie down." "No one asked you," Frank said. "I'm telling you," Clara replied. Her voice shook, but she did not step back. That small courage almost broke me. Logan looked between us, then toward the staff, as if remembering there were witnesses. "Fine," he said at last. "Take her upstairs. We'll discuss this tomorrow." Tomorrow. Another threat disguised as a schedule. Clara guided me up the staircase. I could feel everyone watching. The chandelier light glittered above us, sharp and cold, and every step reminded me that this beautiful house had teeth. Amelia's bedroom was larger than my entire home. There was a fireplace no one had lit, a bed wide enough for 3 people, tall windows dressed in heavy curtains, and a closet door standing slightly open to reveal rows of clothes arranged by color. Everything was expensive. Everything was perfect. Nothing looked loved. Clara closed the door behind us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "What happened to you?" I looked at her. Not suspiciously. Carefully. Because she was the first person in this house who would ask the question like she might actually want the answer. "I don't know," I said. It was the closest truth I could safely give. Her face softened. "You scared me last night." Last night. So Amelia had run. Amelia had crashed. Amelia had tried to leave this place before I ever woke inside her skin. I wanted to ask what kind of woman she had been, what had broken her, what she had done to make her own children afraid. But before I could speak, a sound came from the hallway. Small, soft, a child's cry. Clara heard it too. Her expression changed. "The boys," she murmured. My heart tightened. I walked past her and opened the door. Down the hall, a nightlight glowed beneath a bedroom door, painted with tiny gold letters. Noah and Elias. I pushed it open carefully. The room was beautiful in the way rich children's rooms were beautiful. Painted stars on the ceiling, matching beds, shelves full of toys that looked barely touched. One boy lay curled under his blanket, awake and watching me. The other sat upright, clutching a stuffed rabbit to his chest. They had golden hair and blue eyes. Logan's eyes. Amelia's face. My borrowed son's. The boy with the rabbit saw me and went rigid. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I stopped moving. "Sorry for what?" His lip trembled. "For crying." The other boy pulled his blanket higher, hiding half his face. I felt something inside me split open. This was not ordinary fear. This was practiced, learned. A child did not apologize for crying unless someone had taught him tears were dangerous. I lowered myself slowly onto the edge of the nearest bed, careful not to reach too fast. "I'm not mad," I said. Both boys stared at me. As if those 3 words belonged to another language. The one with the rabbit blinked. "You're not?" "No." My voice shook. I steadied it. "Are you Noah or Elias?" His little face changed, confusion cutting through the fear. "I'm Elias." The boy under the blanket whispered, "I'm Noah." I nodded like I had not just been stabbed by their answer. A mother should know which child was which. Even trapped in another woman's body, I knew that. "I'm sorry," I said. Elias frowned. "For what?" I looked at both of them, at the way they waited for anger, at the way their small shoulders stayed tense even in bed. "For missing your birthday cake," I said softly. Noah's eyes widened. Elias hugged the rabbit tighter. Neither of them spoke. Behind me, Clara stood in the doorway, silent. I reached for the blanket near Noah's feet, slow enough for him to see every movement. He flinched anyway. I froze. That flinch went through me worse than the crash. Because the Mitchell mansion had marble floors, chandeliers, servants, fountains, and more food than my village church could serve in a month. And still 2 little boys were starving in it. Not for bread. For safety. For softness. For someone who did not make them afraid to breathe. I pulled my hand back and stood. "I'll leave the door open," I told them. "If you need anything, call me." They looked at me like they did not know whether they were allowed to believe it. In the hall, I leaned against the wall and pressed one hand over my aching ribs. Somewhere beyond this house, my father might be dying without me. Somewhere inside this house, Amelia Mitchell's children were waiting for their mother to become someone safe. And I, Rhea Freya, stood between both worlds, in a body that was not mine, realizing luxury had not saved anyone here. It had only made the cage shine.
Amelia's point of view.
Daniel Freya refused the wheelchair. The nurse insisted. He smiled at her with the weary patience of a man who had been treated like a problem for too long, and said, "Save it for somebody who needs it more." He was the one with the oxygen tube beneath his nose. He was the one whose hands trembled when he reached for the discharge papers. He was the one who had to stop halfway down the clinic hall because his breath caught, thin and sharp, in his chest. Still, he tried to carry my bag. Not my bag. Rhea's. A faded canvas thing with one broken zipper and a pair of work gloves sticking out from the side pocket. "I can take it," I said. My voice still startled me, lower, stronger, not mine. Daniel looked at me as if I had asked to lift a mountain. "You just woke up from a crash, baby girl. You can barely stand." The words came out before I could soften them. For a moment, I expected anger. In the Mitchell house, truth was never allowed unless it wore perfume and arrived as an insult. Frank could call me useless. Evelyn could dissect my face over breakfast. Logan could bury me beneath silence. But if I ever answered plainly, I was dramatic, unstable, and ungrateful. Daniel only gave a small laugh that turned into a cough. "Then I guess we're both a mess," he said. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. That was the strangest part. I let him. His fingers were dry and warm around mine, not possessive, not demanding. He held my hand the way someone held a fragile thing while pretending it was not fragile at all. A neighbor drove us home in an old blue pickup that smelled of dust, onions, and engine oil. Her name was Mrs. Duarte, and she kept looking at me in the mirror with wet eyes. "You scared half the village," she said. "Your father nearly broke himself trying to get to you." Daniel leaned against the passenger seat, exhausted but watching me constantly. "Don't fuss, Marisol." "I'll fuss if I want," she snapped. "Somebody has to, since neither of you knows how to rest." I sat in the back with my arms wrapped around my middle and stared out at the road. The world outside the window was nothing like the roads leading to the Mitchell estate. No iron gates, no manicured hedges, no stone walls hiding wealth from the people who paid to admire it. Here the land stretched open and rough beneath the afternoon sun. Fields rolled out in uneven patches, fences leaned, small houses sat far apart, their roofs rusted, their porches crowded with buckets, tools, and laundry shifting in the wind. Olive trees bent over the dirt like old women keeping secrets. It should have frightened me. It did frighten me, but not in the way the mansion had. There, fear was polished. Here it had mud on its shoes and stood where anyone could see it. "Mrs. Duarte turned onto a narrow road and stopped before a small house with chipped white paint and a porch sagging slightly at one end. "This is us," Daniel said. "Us." The word struck me with unexpected force. The house was tiny, smaller than Amelia Mitchell's dressing room. The windows were open, curtains moving in the breeze. A cracked clay pot sat beside the steps with a stubborn green plant growing out of it. A pair of boots rested near the door, one tipped over as if someone had taken them off in a hurry and meant to come back. Rhea had meant to come back. My stomach tightened. Daniel reached for the door handle, but Mrs. Duarte slapped his hand away. "You wait." She came around and helped him first, then me, though I hated needing help. Rhea's body was strong beneath the bruises. I could feel it even through the pain. The power in the legs, the steadiness in the shoulders, the evidence of a life spent carrying more than it should have had to carry. Inside, the house smelled of wood, soap, dried herbs, and something faintly sweet. It was poor. There was no pretending otherwise. The floorboards creaked. The sofa had a blanket thrown over a worn place in the cushion. The kitchen table was scarred with knife marks and old burns. The cupboards did not close properly. A fan turned lazily overhead, clicking each time it circled. But everywhere I looked, I saw proof of hands that cared. A clean towel folded beside the sink, a jar of wild flowers on the table, photographs tucked into the frame of a mirror, a quilt mended with mismatched thread, medicine bottles arranged carefully near a notebook filled with numbers. Bills, appointments, amounts owed, amounts saved. Rhea's handwriting covered the pages in tight, determined lines. Daniel saw me looking and moved too quickly to close the notebook. "You don't need to worry about that today." I stared at him. "What is it?" "Nothing." I knew that lie. I had lived inside that lie for years, smiling at charity galas while my marriage rotted behind closed doors. It isn't nothing. He looked tired then, not only sick, but ashamed. Mrs. Duarte set a pot on the stove with more noise than necessary. It's the surgery money, that's what it is. Or what's left of it. Daniel's face tightened. Marisol. She should know. She already knows enough. I gripped the back of the chair. Tell me. The room went quiet except for the fan clicking overhead. Daniel lowered himself into the chair with careful slowness. You worked hard, he said. Too hard. I told you not to. Told you I'd be fine with whatever time God gave me. My throat closed. But you wouldn't listen. His smile trembled. Never did when it came to me. Mrs. Duarte wiped her hands on a towel. She took every shift the farms would give her, packing, picking, hauling crates, came home with hands bleeding some nights, and still cooked for him. Daniel looked at me, eyes shining. Baby girl, you said we were close. You said if we could just make the first hospital deposit, maybe they'd keep me on the list. The notebook seemed to burn on the table between us. And then? I asked, though I already knew. Mrs. Duarte's mouth hardened. Then his sister and her useless children came around acting concerned, brought soup, kissed his cheek, said family should be family. Daniel looked away. I felt anger rise in Rhea's body, sudden and clean. They took it, I said. Mrs. Duarte nodded once. Every dollar they could find. The crash returned to me in pieces that did not belong to my memory. A truck, a road, a rage so desperate it became motion. Rhea chasing thieves because they had stolen her father's chance to live. I sank into the chair across from Daniel. My borrowed hands shook. I had wanted to die. That was the truth I had not spoken aloud. In the mansion, in that car, on that road, I had not been driving toward anything. I had only been driving away. I had believed my life was so empty that leaving it behind would be mercy. But Rhea Freya had been fighting to return to hers. She had crashed trying to save a man who loved her. And I was sitting in her kitchen, breathing with her lungs, being called daughter by her father, while she was somewhere inside my ruin. Guilt pressed down on me until I could hardly inhale. Daniel misread my silence. I'm sorry, he whispered. I looked up. His face had folded under the weight of shame. I should have protected you from them, from all of this. He reached across the table, and I did not move away when he covered my hand. You were supposed to have a life bigger than my sickness. Something inside me twisted. He was apologizing to me. To Rhea. For being loved enough to be saved. I thought of Frank telling me childbirth had finally made me useful. Of Evelyn correcting the way I held my sons in photographs. Of Logan standing outside nursery doors while the twins cried, saying, if you go in every time, they'll learn to manipulate you. No one had ever apologized for what they took from me. Daniel Freya apologized for needing help to stay alive. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. The words came out rough. His fingers tightened. Mrs. Duarte turned away quickly, pretending to stir something in the pot. That evening, neighbors came. One brought rice, another brought bread wrapped in cloth. Someone left eggs at the door and shouted through the screen that Rhea better not touch chores for at least 3 days. A boy carried in firewood without being asked. An older man fixed the latch on the gate while Daniel called from the porch that it had been broken for months and there was no need. No one asked for payment. No one mentioned reputation. No one smiled for the cameras. I waited for the hook hidden inside the kindness. It never appeared. When the house finally emptied and the sky outside turned violet, Daniel made me sit while he warmed soup with hands that shook. I tried to stop him. He ignored me with the quiet stubbornness of a man who had raised a daughter in love and very little else. You need to eat, he said, setting the bowl in front of me. So do you. I will. You're lying. His eyebrows lifted. I froze, expecting reprimand again. Instead, he smiled. There she is, he murmured. The affection in his voice nearly broke me. I ate because he watched me like it mattered. The soup was simple, too salty, and better than anything served in crystal bowls at the Mitchell table. Later, he showed me the small room that was Rhea's. A narrow bed, a wooden dresser, work clothes folded in stacks, a few books with cracked spines, a photograph of Rhea and Daniel pinned beside the window, his arm around her shoulders, her smile wide and unguarded. I touched the edge of the picture. There she was, the woman whose life I was wearing, the woman whose father loved me without knowing I was a thief in his daughter's skin. From the doorway, Daniel said, "Rest now, baby girl. I'll be right across the hall." I nodded without turning around. If I looked at him, I might confess everything. But what would I say? That his daughter was gone and I had taken her place? That I was Amelia Mitchell, who had envied death so deeply that fate gave her someone else's life instead? Daniel's steps faded. I sat on Rhea's bed in the darkening room and pressed my hands over my face. This house was small, worn, poor enough that every bill on the table felt like a threat. But it held something the mansion never had. Warmth. And that warmth was not mine. Not really. Somewhere Rhea was trapped behind my face, surrounded by people who knew how to make a woman disappear while calling it family. I lay down carefully, listening to Daniel cough through the wall, and for the first time since the crash, I prayed. Not for myself, not for escape, but for the woman I had never met. "Hold on," I whispered into the dark, because I was beginning to understand the terrible shape of what had happened. I had not only woken in another body, I had woken inside someone else's reason to live.
Rhea's point of view.
Morning came dressed like an accusation. A maid knocked once before entering Amelia's bedroom, carrying a tray with tea I had not asked for, and a dress wrapped in tissue paper. She kept her eyes lowered as she crossed the room, as if looking directly at me might get her punished. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said softly. "Mrs. Mitchell Sr. chose this for breakfast." I sat up too quickly and pain caught along my ribs. I pressed a hand there, breathing through it. The maid pretended not to notice. Everything in this house seemed built on pretending. I looked at the dress laid across the chair. Cream silk, long sleeves, high collar. Pretty enough to hide bruises, expensive enough to make suffering look decorative. "I can dress myself," I said. The maid froze. "Yes, ma'am." Her fear made me softer. "What's your name?" She looked startled. "Marta, ma'am." "Marta," I repeated. "Thank you." Her eyes lifted for half a second, confused by something as simple as being thanked. Then she nodded and slipped from the room. I dressed slowly. Amelia's body ached in places I had no names for. Every movement reminded me of the crash, of glass, of metal, of waking under another woman's skin. In the mirror, Amelia Mitchell stared back at me. Blonde hair brushed smooth, blue eyes shadowed with exhaustion, a bandage near her temple, a mouth that looked made for silence. I wanted my own face so badly. It hurt. I wanted my father's old house, the cracked kitchen table, the smell of coffee he brewed too strongly. I wanted his cough from the other room, because even that meant he was alive. Instead, I had silk on my skin and a wedding ring on my hand. When I reached the dining room, everyone was already seated. The room was long, bright, and cold. Sunlight poured across polished wood. Silver gleamed beside plates arranged with careful beauty. There were bowls of fruit, warm pastries, eggs, coffee, and more food than any 4 people needed. No one seemed hungry. Frank sat at the head of the table like a judge. Evelyn sat beside him. Perfect hair, perfect earrings, perfect disapproval. Logan was halfway down the table, reading something on his phone. Clara sat across from him, her hands folded tightly. The twins sat side by side near the end. Noah and Elias. They wore matching shirts. Their hair was neatly combed. Their little backs were straight, their feet barely touching the floor. Neither of them moved until an adult moved first. My heart tightened. Elias glanced at me, then quickly looked down. Noah stared at his plate like it might save him. "Finally," Evelyn said. "You kept us waiting." I looked at the clock on the wall. It's 8:02. Frank's fork paused. Clara's lips parted slightly. Logan looked up from his phone. Evelyn's smile thinned. A simple apology would have done. I walked to the empty chair beside Logan. A servant pulled it out for me before I could touch it. I hated that too, the way people moved around me like trained shadows. I sat carefully. Frank poured cream into his coffee. "How fortunate you survived. The damage to the car was impressive. If only your instinct for self-destruction were useful elsewhere." The room went still. Noah's fingers tightened around his spoon. Elias stopped chewing. Logan said nothing. That silence was louder than Frank's cruelty. I looked at Logan, waiting. Still, some foolish part of me waited for the man from television to appear. The one who looked into cameras and told broken people that dignity was not negotiable. He did not come. Logan Mitchell only lifted his coffee cup. Evelyn sighed. "Frank, please. Not in front of the children." Not because it was cruel. Because there were witnesses too young to hide their faces. Frank smiled at me. "I apologize. Your mother is right. We should be grateful. Amelia has always had a talent for surviving consequences. Other people must clean up." Something in me settled. Not exploded. Settled. Back home, anger had always been fire. Fast, dangerous, hot enough to make me reckless. Here, it became stone. I placed my napkin beside my plate and looked Frank directly in the eye. "If you have something to say to me, say it plainly." Evelyn gasped. Clara went completely still. Frank's face did not change at first, but his eyes sharpened. "Excuse me?" "You keep dressing insults up like manners." My voice was calm enough to surprise even me. "It wastes time. Say what you mean." The spoon slipped from Elias's hand and clinked against his bowl. Logan set down his cup. "Amelia." There it was again. The warning. I turned toward him. "Yes?" His jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "When is the time?" I asked. "After breakfast? After your father sends me to scrub floors with stitches in my side? After your mother tells me which dress makes my injuries least embarrassing?" Evelyn's face flushed. "You are unwell." "No," I said. "I am tired." The words came from somewhere deep and old. Tired of men taking money from my hands. Tired of being told gratitude meant silence. Tired of waking inside wealth and finding the same kind of hunger wearing better clothes. Frank leaned back. "Logan, control your wife." I laughed once. Not loudly. But it cut through the room anyway. Logan's eyes darkened. "Don't." "Control?" I repeated. "Is that what marriage means in this house?" No one answered. Because the answer sat at the table with us, wearing a suit and polished shoes. Logan stood. "Enough." The twins flinched. Both of them. At the same time. The movement was small, but I saw it. So did Clara. Her face tightened with pain. I looked at Logan then, really looked at him. The famous man, the charming host, the voice that had once carried me through nights so hard I could not stand upright without leaning on the sink. He was not brave. He was not kind. He was a man who knew when to lower his voice so servants would not hear too much. A man who knew when to stay silent so cruelty could pass through the room without staining his own hands. And I had loved him from a distance because distance was merciful. Elias's small voice broke the silence. "Mommy?" Everyone turned toward him. He shrank instantly, regret flashing across his face. I softened my voice. "Yes, baby." The words slipped out naturally. Too naturally. His eyes widened. Noah looked at me, startled. Elias swallowed. Why didn't you come for cake? The question landed harder than any insult. His birthday. Their birthday. Candles and guests and photographs, and 2 little boys waiting for a mother who'd been too broken to stay. I did not know what Amelia would have said. I only knew what I could say. I'm sorry, I told him. Evelyn made a sharp sound. Amelia. I ignored her. I looked at Noah too. I should have been there. You both deserved that. I'm sorry I hurt you. Noah's mouth parted slightly. Elias stared as if I had performed some magic no one had taught him to believe in. Frank scoffed. Now she chooses breakfast for theater. I turned on him. Don't speak over them. His hand slammed against the table. Coffee jumped in its cup. The twins froze again. My chair scraped back as I stood. Logan moved too. Sit down. No. The word was small. It still changed the air. I'm taking them upstairs, I said. Evelyn rose halfway from her chair. The nanny can take them. You need to stop upsetting everyone. They are already upset. Logan stepped closer. His voice dropped so low it was meant only for me. You are making a mistake. I looked at him, at the handsome face that had fooled millions, at the careful coldness in his eyes. No, I said. I think I'm done making yours. For a second, no one breathed. Then I turned to the boys. Come with me. I made it a question, not a command. They looked at Logan first. That hurt worse than I expected. Children should not need permission to accept kindness from their mother. Logan's face hardened, but Clara stood suddenly. I'll go with them, she said. Frank snapped, Clara. She lifted her chin. They've had enough breakfast. The boys slipped from their chairs like they were afraid the floor might complain. Elias held his rabbit under one arm. Noah reached for his brother's sleeve, then glanced at me. I held out my hand. Not too close. Not demanding. Noah looked at it for a long moment. Then he placed his small fingers in mine. Elias followed. Their hands were warm. Trusting? No, not yet. But curious. That was enough to make my throat ache. We left the dining room with every adult watching us. I felt Logan's stare between my shoulder blades all the way to the stairs. Halfway up, Elias whispered, Are you still mad? I stopped. I knelt carefully despite the pain in my ribs, bringing myself closer to their height. I'm not mad at you. Noah studied my face. You said sorry. I meant it. His brow furrowed. Grown-ups don't mean it. Clara looked away. I wanted to ask who had taught him that. I already knew. Some don't, I said, but I do. Elias leaned against Noah, still watching me like I might disappear if he blinked. Behind us, from below, Logan's voice carried faintly through the house. Cold, controlled, angry. I stood and took the boys upstairs. For the first time since waking in Amelia Mitchell's life, I did not feel like I was only trapped here. I felt like I had interrupted something. And downstairs, Logan Mitchell had finally noticed.
Amelia's point of view.
I had never known how much a poor house asked of a person before sunrise. The rooster began first. Then the pipe beneath the kitchen sink knocked like an old man clearing his throat. Then Daniel coughed through the thin wall between our rooms, trying and failing to make it quiet. Then something scratched outside the back door, claws against wood, impatient for food. I opened my eyes to a ceiling stained by old rain and lay very still. For 3 seconds, I forgot whose body I was in. Then I saw my hands. Dark, strong, calloused across the palms, nails cut short, one knuckle bruised from the crash. Rhea's hands. Not mine. Across the hall, Daniel coughed again. I got up. The floor was cold beneath my feet. My ribs protested when I bent to pull on Rhea's work pants. But the pain no longer frightened me. Pain had always existed in my life. It was only dressed differently now. In the Mitchell house, pain wore silk. Here, it wore dust. I found Daniel in the kitchen trying to lift a kettle with shaking hands. "Put that down," I said. He turned too fast, and the oxygen tube tugged against his cheek. "Morning to you too." "I mean it." "So do I," he smiled, like I was the difficult one. "You need coffee before you start ordering dying men around." The word dying landed between us like a dropped knife. Daniel saw my face and softened. "Bad joke." "Terrible joke." "Your mother always hated my humor too." I went still. He noticed, but not in the way Logan would have noticed. Logan noticed weakness so he could decide whether to use it or ignore it. Daniel noticed because he cared what hurt. "You don't talk about her much," I said carefully. He lowered himself into the chair, each movement measured. "Not much to say. She left before you could remember her. Some people aren't made for staying." The kettle hissed behind us. I thought of the Mitchell mansion, of bedrooms no one entered unless summoned, of children waiting at the edge of rooms, never sure which version of their mother they would receive. "Were you angry?" I asked. "At first." Daniel rubbed his thumb over a scratch on the table. "Then you got a fever at 3 months old and screamed all night unless I walked you. I didn't have time to be angry after that. I had diapers to wash." He smiled at the memory. Not bitterly. Tenderly. "She left you with a baby?" I said. "She left me with you." My throat closed. I turned toward the stove before he could see what that did to me. The morning chores waited outside. At least, they waited for Rhea. For me, they attacked. The chickens came first, flapping and pecking as if they knew an imposter had entered their kingdom. I spilled half the feed before I found the right bucket. One hen escaped through a gap near the fence and sent me stumbling after her through the dirt, while Daniel wheezed with laughter from the porch. "You've done that since you were 8, he called. "Still losing to Henrietta." "I hate Henrietta." "You named her." "That was poor judgment." He laughed until he coughed, and I immediately forgot the chicken. I ran to him. He waved me off, embarrassed. "I'm fine." "You are not fine." "Close enough." There was nothing close about it. His skin had a gray tiredness beneath its warmth. His breath came shallow. Even sitting in the morning light, wrapped in an old cardigan, he looked like a man held together by habit and love. And Rhea had been trying to save him with wages earned one aching hour at a time. I understood money. I had been surrounded by it for years. Money had bought my wedding gown, my son's nursery, the imported flowers Evelyn sent back twice because the color was wrong. Money had filled rooms I never felt safe in. Here, money meant time. Breath. A father. The fence behind the coop leaned badly. Daniel insisted it could wait. Mrs. Duarte, who appeared with bread wrapped in a towel and opinions no one asked for, insisted it could not. "Go on," she told me. "Hammer is in the shed. Nails in the coffee tin." I looked at the fence, then at my hands, then at the shed. Mrs. Duarte squinted. "You forget where the shed is too?" "No." I walked to the wrong building first. She sighed so loudly that even the chickens paused. By noon, I had hammered my thumb twice, torn my sleeve on wire, and learned that carrying 2 buckets of water was not a matter of strength alone, but balance, rhythm, and not being too proud to make 3 trips. Rhea's body was strong. That startled me most. Not untouched, not rested, but strong in a way mine had never been allowed to become. My old body had been managed, dressed, photographed, criticized. This one had lifted, bent, pulled, carried, endured. By the second trip from the well, my shoulders burned, but beneath the ache was something else. Usefulness. A simple, solid proof that I could do a thing and see the thing done. At the mansion, I had been surrounded by tasks that meant nothing. Smile beside Logan, Stand where Evelyn pointed. Hold the twins correctly in photographs. Apologize for emotions no one wanted to witness. Here, if I carried water, Daniel drank. If I fed chickens, eggs appeared. If I fixed the fence badly, at least Henrietta stayed trapped on the correct side of it. The satisfaction frightened me, because it did not belong to me. In the afternoon, I tried to cook. That was worse than the chickens. Daniel liked beans with garlic, rice soft but not wet, and fried plantains cut thin. I burned the garlic, drowned the rice, and nearly dropped the pan when oil snapped against my wrist. Daniel ate everything. Slowly, gravely, as if I had prepared a banquet. You don't have to pretend, I said. He looked offended. I am not pretending. It's terrible. It's food. It's ruined food. It was made by my daughter. He lifted another spoonful. That improves it. I had no defense against that. None. So I sat across from him and watched him eat until the guilt became too heavy to swallow. After dinner, I found the notebook again. The one with Rhea's tight handwriting. Amounts earned. Amounts owed. Clinic dates. Medicine schedules. Names of doctors. A page labeled Transplant Fund with numbers crossed out and rewritten until the paper had thinned beneath the pen. At the bottom, in smaller writing, was a list of names. Relatives. The ones who had come with soup and stolen everything. Aunt Celia, Tomas, Bren, Lila. Beside one name, Rhea had written only one word. Begged. I touched the page. I could see her there, though I had never met her. Exhausted. Furious. Terrified. Begging people who shared her blood not to steal her father's life. And I had awakened inside what she had fought to keep. Daniel found me at the table after dark. You shouldn't stare at that too long, he said from the doorway. Numbers get cruel at night. How much do you need? He did not answer. That was answer enough. How long, I asked. He looked at the floor. The doctor said sooner is better. Daniel. His eyes lifted. The name had come out too formal, too distant. His face tightened with quiet hurt before he hit it. Sorry, I whispered. He gave a small smile. You only call me Daniel when you're scared. I looked away. If he knew the truth, he would hate me. He would look at me and understand that the daughter he loved was gone, replaced by a woman who had once prayed not to wake up at all. That night, the nightmare came. I was back at the Mitchell mansion, but the marble floor had turned to mud. The twins stood at the top of the staircase, calling for me with Rhea's voice. Logan waited below, smiling for cameras, while blood ran from the chandelier like rain. Then the road appeared. 2 sets of headlights. 2 cars. 2 women screaming inside the same darkness. I woke up with a sob caught in my throat. Daniel was already there. He sat on the edge of the bed despite the oxygen tube, despite the weakness, despite the fact that walking across the hall had cost him more than he would admit. Easy, he murmured. You're home. I was shaking. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. For one terrible, beautiful moment, I forgot to be careful. Dad, I whispered. The room went silent. Daniel's fingers tightened around mine. I realized what I had said and went cold inside. But he smiled. Not surprised enough. Not wounded. Only tender. Well, he said softly, that's what I am. Something inside me broke open. I turned my face away, but he brushed his thumb over my knuckles, the way a father might soothe a child who had spent too long pretending she was grown. I had wanted escape. I had wanted death. Now, in a stranger's bed, in a borrowed body with another woman's dying father holding my hand, I wanted something far more unforgivable. I wanted to stay. And somewhere beyond the dark, Rhea Freya was still living inside my cage.
Rhea's point of view.
Children were not meant to move like shadows. By the third morning in the Mitchell house, I had learned that Noah never entered a room first. Elias never asked for anything without looking at the nearest adult's face to see if wanting was allowed. They walked softly. They spoke softly. They flinched when doors closed too hard. No child should have known how to make himself small so well. I found them outside Amelia's bedroom just after sunrise, standing side by side in their matching pajamas. Elias held his rabbit by one ear. Noah had both hands behind his back, his chin tucked down. They looked as if they had been caught stealing. "Good morning," I said. Elias blinked at me. Noah stared at the carpet. "We weren't coming in." "I didn't say you were. We were just standing." "I can see that." His ears turned pink. I crouched, ignoring the pull in Amelia's bruised ribs. "Do you want to come in?" They exchanged a glance. That small glance told me more than any confession could have. They were used to deciding together whether a room was safe. Elias whispered, "Are you sick still?" "A little." "Are you angry?" "No." "With us?" My throat tightened. "No, baby. Never with you for standing outside a door." Noah studied my face as if searching for the trap. There wasn't one. He slowly brought his hands from behind his back. In them was a wooden horse with one leg snapped off. "It broke," he said. He said it the way another child might admit to setting fire to the curtains. I held out my hand. "May I see?" He placed it in my palm carefully. "It was an accident," Elias rushed to say. "He didn't throw it. We were playing horses and the blanket fell and—" "Accidents happen," I said. Both boys went still. Noah's eyes lifted. "They do?" The question was so quiet I almost missed it. I thought of my father's old truck, of the money box emptied by greedy hands, of the tree coming at me through the dark. Some accidents were accidents. Some were the result of other people's cruelty. But a broken toy in a child's hand should never have felt like a crime. "Yes," I said. "They do. We'll fix it." Elias looked behind me into the room. "You know how?" "No," I stood. "But we'll find someone who does." That answer seemed to confuse them even more. Downstairs, the kitchen stopped breathing when I walked in with the twins. Marta stood by the counter polishing a tray. The cook turned from the stove with a spoon in her hand. Two footmen near the pantry suddenly became very interested in the wall. I had discovered quickly that Amelia Mitchell did not enter kitchens unless she was being punished or humiliated. I entered anyway. "Good morning," I said. "Do we have glue?" The cook stared. "Glue, ma'am?" "For a horse." Elias held up the broken toy like evidence. Marta's mouth softened before she caught herself. "I'll check the utility drawer." Noah moved closer to my side. "Have you eaten?" I asked them. They shook their heads. "What do you like?" Again, they looked at each other. Elias whispered, "Whatever Nana says." I hated this house a little more every time I learned a new rule. "Today I'm asking what you like." Noah's answer was barely there. "Pancakes." Elias clutched his rabbit. "With blueberries. But only sometimes. Nana says syrup makes us sticky." I looked at the cook. "Can we make pancakes with blueberries?" The woman's eyes flicked toward the hallway, as if Evelyn Mitchell might rise out of the marble itself. "Of course, Mrs. Mitchell." "I mean us," I said. The kitchen went silent again. 20 minutes later there was flour on Elias's sleeve, a smear of batter on Noah's cheek, and a bowl tipped sideways across the counter. Noah froze when the batter spilled. His face emptied. His shoulders rose. I knew that look. I had seen it in farm dogs kicked too often. I had seen it in women waiting for a drunk husband's hand. I had never wanted to see it on a 6-year-old child. "Hey," I said gently. He did not breathe. "It's only batter." His lips trembled. "I'm sorry." "I know. I didn't mean—" "I know that too." I took a cloth and wiped the counter. Then I held it out to him. Want to help me clean it? He stared at the cloth. Not punishment. Not shouting. Just cleaning. Slowly he took it. Elias watched like he was witnessing a miracle. We ate pancakes at the servants' table because it was closer and warmer than the dining room. Marta pretended not to smile every time Elias licked syrup from his fingers. The cook pretended not to notice when Noah ate 4 pancakes and hid a 5th under his napkin. For later? I asked. He went red. I leaned closer. Good thinking. That earned me the smallest smile. It was gone almost immediately, but I saw it. After breakfast, I learned their routines. Lessons at 9. French, piano, numbers, posture, quiet play afterward. Lunch with Evelyn if she required them. Outdoor time only if clothing allowed. Bath before dinner. Bed at 7:30, lights dimmed, no getting up unless called. I also learned their fears. Elias hated dark closets, but never said so because Frank once told him Mitchell boys were not cowards. Noah arranged his shoes facing the door every night, because if he woke from a bad dream, he wanted to run without wasting time. Elias slept with the rabbit because Clara had given it to him when he was 3 and feverish, and no one else had stayed. Their mother had not stayed either. I carried that knowledge like a stone under my tongue. That afternoon they got mud on their trousers in the garden. The nanny gasped, as if they had rolled in blood. "Mrs. Mitchell, your mother-in-law will be very upset." I looked at the boys. They had already stopped laughing. "We'll wash," I said. "I can call for one of the girls." "No, I'll do it." The bath frightened them at first. Not the water. Me. They sat stiff and silent while I tested the temperature, while I rolled Amelia's sleeves, while I handed Elias his rabbit and told him the rabbit could watch from the chair because rabbits did not belong in tubs. Then Noah splashed by accident. Water struck my bandage. Pain flashed white-hot through my skull. "Careful," I snapped. Both boys folded inward at once. I saw what I had done. The old Amelia's voice had come through my mouth. Or maybe it was simply any adult's sharpness in a house where sharpness meant danger. I knelt beside the tub. "I'm sorry." Noah did not look at me. Elias whispered, "We'll be good." I know. I shouldn't have raised my voice. I pressed a hand lightly to my temple. It hurt, and I got scared. "That was not your fault." They were quiet for so long I heard water drip from the faucet. Then Noah asked, "Grown-ups can say sorry twice?" "As many times as they need to." Elias looked at his brother. "Even grandfather?" I hesitated. "No," Noah said before I could answer. "Not grandfather." That night, I read to them. The book was about a rabbit who wanted to cross a river. Elias informed me that I was holding it wrong. Noah corrected my rabbit voice. I made the fox sound like Mrs. Duarte from home without meaning to, and the ache for my father nearly split me open. The boys laughed. Not politely. Not carefully. They laughed until Elias hiccuped, and Noah pressed both hands over his mouth, like joy was something he had to keep from spilling. I smiled before I could stop myself. Noah noticed. His laughter faded. "What?" I asked softly. He traced the blanket seam with one finger. "Why are you smiling now, Mommy?" The room became too still. Elias turned his rabbit over and over in his hands. I wanted to tell them I was not their mother. I wanted to tell them that somewhere their real mother was wearing my face and learning what it meant to be loved. I wanted to tell them I was sorry for every empty room, every missed bedtime, every birthday candle they had blown out while waiting for a woman too broken to come back. Instead, I touched the edge of the blanket. "Because I like being with you." Noah's brow furrowed. "Before, you didn't." There it was. Simple. Devastating. I swallowed. "Before, I think I forgot how to show it." Elias leaned against his brother. "Can you remember tomorrow too?" I had to look away. "Yes," I said. I can remember tomorrow. The house noticed before the day was over. Servants whispered in corners. Clara watched me with eyes full of questions she was too kind to ask. Evelyn found syrup on Elias's cuff and called it unacceptable. Frank saw Noah carrying the repaired horse and said indulgence made weak men. Logan said nothing. That was worse. He watched from doorways, from the bottom of staircases, from across rooms where he pretended to read messages on his phone. His gaze followed the boys when they reached for my hand. It followed me when I bent to kiss Elias's forehead, and Noah did not pull away. After I put them to bed, Logan waited in the hallway. The lamps were low. His face looked almost gentle in the shadows, which was how he had fooled me for years through a television screen. "What game are you playing?" he asked. I closed the nursery door softly. "Lower your voice. They just fell asleep." His jaw tightened. "Don't perform motherhood for me." I turned to him. "Is that what kindness looks like to you? A performance?" "You barely looked at them last week." The words struck because they were true for Amelia, even if they were not true for me. "I'm looking now." "That's convenient." "No," I said. "It's late." His eyes narrowed. "Who are you trying to impress? Clara? The staff? My parents?" "Them." I nodded toward the nursery door. "Your sons." Something flickered in his face. Not guilt. Not yet. But discomfort. I stepped closer. "They flinch when you stand too fast." His expression hardened. "Careful." "No. You be careful." My voice stayed quiet. "Children don't become that afraid by accident." For the first time, Logan Mitchell had no answer ready. And in his silence, I understood. Amelia's fear had not only kept her trapped, it had kept this entire house comfortable. Now that I was no longer wearing it properly, the walls were beginning to shift.
Amelia's point of view.
The first lie I told Daniel that morning was small enough to fit beneath my tongue. "I need to go back to the clinic," I said. He looked up from the table, oxygen tube resting beneath his nose, one hand wrapped around a mug he had no strength to lift. "Your head hurting again?" "Yes." That part was true enough. Everything hurts in some way now. Daniel frowned. "Mrs. Duarte can walk with you." "No." I said it too quickly, then softened my voice. "I mean, I'll be fine. I need air." He watched me for a moment, and I wondered how often Rhea had lied to him badly out of love. At last, he nodded. "Don't overdo it." I almost laughed. Rhea's entire life seemed built from overdoing it. I tucked her notebook into my bag and walked to town. There was no car anymore. The truck had died against the olive tree, and I was alive inside the body it had tried to kill. So I walked the road Rhea must have walked 100 times, past dry grass, broken fences, and fields that smelled of earth and sweat. People called out to me as I passed. "Rhea! Girl, you should be resting. Tell your father we're praying." Every greeting struck like a small theft. They loved her. Or at least they knew her. They knew the tilt of her walk, the shape of her shoulders, the history carried in her name. I nodded when I should have answered. I smiled when silence became suspicious. By the time I reached the clinic, my shirt clung to my back, and my knuckles ached from gripping the strap of my bag. The waiting room was crowded. A baby cried against his mother's shoulder. An old man slept with his mouth open. A television bolted high in the corner played a morning segment with the sound turned low. Logan Mitchell's face filled the screen. For 1 second, I stopped breathing. He smiled into the camera with that familiar warmth, the kind that made strangers believe they were safe with him. "Change begins," he was saying, "when we stop accepting pain as destiny." My stomach twisted. A nurse behind the desk noticed me. "Rhea, what are you doing here?" I tore my eyes from the screen. "I need to ask about the accident." She came around the desk immediately, her expression tightening with concern. "Are you dizzy? Confused? Sit down." I'm not here for that. Your chart said possible memory disturbance. Yes. I swallowed. That's why I need to know something. Was anyone else brought in the same night? The nurse's face changed. Not much, but enough. Anyone else? A woman, I said. Another crash. Maybe a car. Maybe near the North Road. Her eyes sharpened. Why are you asking that? Because I woke up wearing someone else's skin. Because somewhere, a woman named Rhea Freya might be trapped in my life. Because my sons might be looking at a stranger and calling her mother. I remember headlights, I said. I need to know if someone else was hurt. The nurse hesitated. There was talk about another accident, but not here. Private hospital took that one. Big family, it was on the news. My fingers went cold around the bag strap. Mitchell? She glanced toward the television. Logan's face was gone now, replaced by a weather report. I can't discuss another patient. I was right, I whispered. Rhea, her voice lowered. If you're having strange thoughts, that can happen after trauma. It doesn't mean. I'm not imagining this. She looked sorry for me. That was worse than disbelief. I left with nothing official. No records, no proof. Only a rumor, a news mention. And the terrible confirmation that Amelia Mitchell's body had survived somewhere far from this town. Rhea was alive. I did not know whether that made me relieved or afraid. The market was loud with midday bargaining. Women stood beneath patched awnings selling peppers, onions, mangoes, eggs. Men carried crates from trucks. Children ran barefoot between stalls, laughing as if hunger had not learned their names yet. I moved through them with Rhea's notebook pressed against my side. Then I saw her. Lila. I knew her from the list. She stood outside the pharmacy with new gold hoops in her ears and a red handbag tucked under her arm. She was younger than I expected, pretty in a sharp way, with eyes that never settled on anything long enough to claim responsibility. She saw me. The color drained from her expression. Then she ran. I followed. I did not think. Rhea's body moved before I had decided to move it, strong legs cutting through the market, shoulder knocking against a hanging row of baskets. Someone shouted my name. Lila darted behind the butcher's stall, through a narrow lane strung with laundry. I caught her by the gate of a yellow house with cracked steps. She spun around, breathing hard. You shouldn't be out. Why? I asked. Because I might remember? Her mouth trembled. There it was. Proof. I stepped closer. Where is the money? I don't know. Lila. Aunt Celia said you wouldn't remember everything? Then Aunt Celia made a mistake. The door behind her opened. A woman stood there, broad-shouldered, with a scarf tied over her hair and suspicion already hardening her face. Aunt Celia. Behind her, two men appeared, Tomas and Bren, if the notebook was right. They looked at me the way people look at someone they have already decided is easy to hurt. Well, Celia said, the little martyr rises. Tomas laughed. Come to cry again. Something old and cold unfolded inside me. For years, I had sat at polished tables with people who smiled while cutting flesh from bone. I knew the shape of cruelty when it wore perfume. I knew it when it wore work boots too. I came for Daniel's surgery money, I said. Celia scoffed. Always dramatic. Family helps family. Your father owed plenty. He owed you nothing. He owed us years of trouble, Thomas said, and he won't need all that money where he's going. My fist hit the wooden gate before I knew I had moved. Pain split across my knuckles. Everyone went silent. I let the pain steady me. You stole from a dying man, I said. From a locked box in his house, money marked in a notebook with dates, wages, and clinic receipts. Mrs. Duarte saw you leaving. Lila just admitted you expected me not to remember. Lila made a small sound. I didn't. You did, I said without looking at her. Bren shifted. Police won't care about family business. No, I said, but the market will. The church will. The farms that hire you will. The clinic will when I tell them Daniel Freya's relatives stole his transplant fund and spent it while he was breathing through a tube. Celia's jaw tightened. I took another step. I will say your names. I will say them clearly. I will stand anywhere people gather and repeat them until no one in this town can buy eggs from you without remembering what you did. Thomas moved toward me. I did not step back. That surprised him. I have lived with people far crueler than you, I said quietly. You are not impressive. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Celia cursed under her breath and turned into the house. I followed her inside. They had not kept it all. Of course they had not. Some had gone to debts, some to new tires, some, Celia said bitterly, to medicine for a child. As if that made theft holy. Lila would not meet my eyes. Thomas slammed cupboards. Bren called me ungrateful until I asked what gratitude cost per stolen bill. In the end, Celia shoved an envelope into my hands. It was thick enough to give hope, thin enough to mock it. This is all, she said. No, I replied. This is what you're giving me today. Her eyes narrowed. I tucked the envelope into my bag. I'll come back for the rest. The walk home felt longer. My knuckles had swollen, dust stuck to the sweat at my throat. Inside the bag, the money seemed to burn against my hip. I had won something. Not enough. Never enough. Daniel was awake when I entered, sitting at the kitchen table beneath the weak yellow lamp. You were gone a long time, he said. The clinic was busy. His eyes dropped to my hand. I curled my fingers too late. Rhea. I tripped. He gave me a tired smile. You were a better liar at 12. I sat across from him and placed the envelope on the table. For a moment, he only stared. Then his face changed. Not joy, not relief. Grief. What did you do? I asked for what was yours. His gaze moved to my bruised knuckles. Your asking has fists now? I looked away. Daniel reached across the table slowly and covered my hand with his. His fingers were thin, warm, shaking. You've always fought too hard for me, he said. The words almost broke me. Because he was not speaking to me. He was speaking to the daughter who had bled herself dry, trying to keep him alive. The daughter whose body I had borrowed. The daughter who deserved to be sitting here, hearing her father love her. I didn't fight only for you, I whispered. Daniel frowned gently. What? I shook my head. Outside, the evening insects began their thin, restless song. I looked at the envelope between us, at the money recovered from thieves, at the notebook still waiting in my bag. It was not enough for a transplant. Not enough for forgiveness, not enough to undo the crash, or return either of us to where we belonged. But it was something. And for the first time, I wondered if the life I had escaped might still hold a weapon sharp enough to save Rhea's.
Author's point of view.
Sleep did not come easily to either woman that night. At the Mitchell mansion, Rhea fell asleep in a chair between Noah and Elias's beds, one hand resting near the edge of Elias's blanket, because he had asked, in a voice barely louder than breath, if she would stay until morning. She had said yes. At Rhea Freya's small house, Amelia lay awake beneath the patched quilt, listening to Daniel cough through the wall and trying not to look at the bruises darkening across Rhea's knuckles. She had recovered only part of the stolen money, not enough, never enough. The night stretched over both houses, over iron gates and olive trees, over marble floors and cracked floorboards. And somewhere inside that darkness, the two lives touched. Rhea heard the crash first. Metal screamed, glass shattered, tires burned against asphalt. Then she was standing barefoot on a dark road. There was no moon, no stars, only the broken flicker of two sets of headlights shining from opposite sides of the road. On one side, an old truck lay crushed against a massive olive tree, its trunk split where the hood had folded into it. Dirt, leaves, and broken glass glittered beneath its roots. On the other side, iron gates rose from the blackness, tall and severe, the same gates that guarded the Mitchell mansion. Beyond them, golden windows glowed in the distance like a promise that had learned to lie. Between the truck and the gates stood a woman. Rhea knew her before the woman spoke. Amelia Miller-Mitchell. Not as Rhea had seen her in mirrors since waking, not bandaged and silent under the eyes of the Mitchell family. In the dream, Amelia appeared as herself. Blonde hair loose around her shoulders, party dress torn at the hem, blue eyes filled with a sorrow so old it seemed carved into her bones. Across from her, Amelia stared back. She saw Rhea. The real Rhea. Warm brown skin, dark eyes, black hair falling around her face, strong hands marked by work and survival, the woman whose body Amelia had been wearing, the daughter whose father called her baby girl. For a moment, neither of them moved. The road hummed beneath their feet. "You," Rhea whispered. Amelia's lips parted. "Rhea." The sound of her name in Amelia's voice struck Rhea harder than she expected. She took one step forward, but the headlights flared, forcing her to stop. "My father," Rhea said. The words tore out of her. "Is he alive?" Amelia closed her eyes. That hesitation nearly destroyed her. "Tell me," Rhea demanded. "No, yes," Amelia said quickly. "He's alive." Rhea's knees weakened, but she stayed standing. "He's sick," Amelia continued, voice trembling. "Worse than he admits. He coughs at night and pretends it's nothing. He still tries to make breakfast. He still worries more about you than himself." A sound escaped Rhea, half sob, half prayer. Daniel was alive. Her father was alive. "Does he know?" Rhea asked. Amelia looked at her with quiet pain. "No, of course he didn't." Rhea pressed both hands to her mouth and turned toward the crushed truck. The olive leaves stirred, though there was no wind. Then Amelia spoke. "My sons?" Rhea turned back. Amelia's face had changed. The fear in it was sharper now, naked. "Noah and Elias," she said. "Are they safe?" Rhea thought of the twins in their perfect bedroom, sleeping like children who did not fully trust sleep. Elias clutching his rabbit, Noah arranging his shoes toward the door, their little bodies folding inward when voices rose. "They're alive," Rhea said. Amelia's shoulders sagged with relief. But Rhea could not leave it there. "They're afraid." The relief broke. Amelia looked down. "They flinch when someone stands too fast," Rhea said. "They ask permission to want things." Elias apologized for crying. Noah thought spilling batter was something he had to be punished for. Amelia covered her mouth. Rhea had meant the words to wound. Some part of her wanted them to. She wanted Amelia to feel every frightened breath those boys had taken in that house. But when Amelia looked up, there was no excuse in her eyes. Only recognition. "I know," Amelia whispered. The anger inside Rhea faltered. "You know?" "I saw it," Amelia said. "I saw it and did nothing because I had already forgotten how to protect myself. Protecting them felt impossible. They needed you." "I know." The road cracked between them, a thin line of light opening beneath the asphalt. Rhea stepped back. Amelia did not. "I'm not defending it," Amelia said. "There isn't a defense." The headlights dimmed. For a heartbeat, they could hear both worlds at once. Daniel coughing through a wall, Elias laughing over a storybook, Frank's voice cutting through a dining room, Mrs. Duarte calling from a porch. Rhea swallowed hard. "What happened to us?" "I ran," Amelia said. "I chased them," Rhea answered. "My relatives. They took the surgery money. I found some of it." Rhea stared at her. Amelia's hands curled at her sides. "Not enough, but some." "How?" "I followed Celia into town. She panicked when she saw me. That told me everything. Rhea's face tightened. She always smiles before she steals? Yes, Amelia said. I know women like her. Men too. People who take because they think shame will keep the victim quiet. Rhea thought of Frank Mitchell, Evelyn, Logan's silence. So do I, she said. A bitter understanding passed between them. Then Amelia's voice softened. Are they hurting you? Rhea almost laughed. They're trying. Logan. The name landed heavily. Rhea remembered the man on television, the man she had believed in, the man whose face had lit the darkness of her father's sick room and made poverty feel, for 1 hour, survivable. He isn't what I thought, she said. Amelia's smile held no humor. No. He lets them do it. Yes. He watches. Yes. That's worse sometimes. Amelia looked toward the iron gates. I used to tell myself silence was not cruelty. Was it? Amelia did not answer. She didn't have to. The dream shifted. For a second, Amelia stood in Rhea's kitchen, Daniel's hand wrapped around hers. Then she was back on the road. For a second, Rhea stood in the twins' bedroom with Noah's small fingers gripping her sleeve. Then she was back, too. Both women looked down at themselves. Their outlines flickered. Borrowed bodies. True bodies. Lives blurring at the edges. The longer this goes on, Amelia whispered, the harder it feels to remember where I end. Rhea's throat tightened. Noah had called her Mommy, and she had answered. Daniel had called Amelia baby girl, and Amelia had let him. That was the terror. Not only that they were trapped, that part of them had begun to fit. You don't want to come back, Rhea said. Amelia's eyes filled. I don't want to return to that house, she admitted. For the first time in years, someone looks at me like I'm worth keeping alive. He's looking at Rhea. I know. The honesty did not make it less cruel. Amelia lifted her chin. And you? Do you want to leave my sons? Rhea looked toward the iron gates. Behind them, she heard Elias's voice. Can you remember tomorrow too? No, she said, and the word hurt. But my father needs me. My sons need me. Yes. Neither woman moved. There was no clean answer. No mercy waiting on either side of the road. Only two women standing between wreckage and consequence, each holding a life that belonged to the other. Then a voice moved through the darkness. It did not belong to Rhea. It did not belong to Amelia. It seemed to rise from the olive tree, the iron gates, the broken cars, the road itself. A life can be borrowed. It cannot be stolen. The headlights burst bright. Rhea threw up an arm. Amelia reached for her. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. The road split open between them. Rhea, Amelia cried. My father, Rhea shouted over the roar. Keep him alive. My sons, Amelia answered. Don't let them be alone. The darkness tore them apart. Rhea woke in the twins' room with tears on Amelia's face, Elias's rabbit pressed against her knee, and Noah whispering in his sleep. In the village, Amelia woke in Rhea's bed with tears on Rhea's cheeks, Daniel coughing through the wall and calling, Baby girl. Both women answered into the dark at the same time. I'm here. But neither of them knew for how long. By morning, both houses understood that something had changed. At the Mitchell mansion, the change moved through the halls before breakfast. Servants lowered their voices when Rhea passed. Clara watched her with open worry. Logan avoided looking directly at the boys when Noah reached for Rhea's hand and did not let go. Frank noticed everything. He waited until the twins were taken to their lessons before summoning Amelia to the study. The room smelled of leather, old books, and decisions made without mercy. Frank stood behind the desk. Evelyn sat near the window, gloved hands folded in her lap. Logan leaned against the fireplace, his expression controlled in the way it became controlled before cruelty arrived. On the desk lay a folder. Rhea saw the name printed across the top. Meridian Wellness Institute. She did not touch it. Frank did not waste time. This has gone far enough. Rhea looked from him to Logan. What has? This performance, Evelyn said, the mood swings, the sudden attachment to the children, the disrespect, it is not healthy. Rhea almost laughed. In this house, kindness was illness. Logan finally looked at her. You need rest. No, Rhea said, you need me quiet. Frank's eyes sharpened. Logan's jaw tightened. Be careful. Rhea was tired of that warning. Men like Logan loved careful women. Careful women lowered their voices, swallowed insults, accepted locked doors if the lock was called concern. She rested one hand on the back of the chair but did not sit. What is in the folder? A private facility, Frank said. Excellent doctors, discreet staff. You'll be away from the boys until you're stable. The words struck exactly where he meant them to. Away from the boys. Evelyn's voice softened into something worse than anger. Noah and Elias need consistency. Your behavior is confusing them. My behavior? Rhea asked. Reading to them, feeding them, apologizing? They are Mitchell children, Frank snapped. They do not need coddling. They are 6. They are heirs. Rhea stared at him, and in that instant she understood why the mansion felt so cold despite all its fireplaces. Children were not children here. Wives were not wives. Love was not love. Everything was property. Logan pushed away from the mantel. Amelia, if you cooperate, this can be handled quietly. And if I don't? Frank smiled. Then we petition for medical guardianship. Your accident, your erratic behavior, your history of instability. My history, Rhea repeated. The words belonged to Amelia, and yet the threat slid under Rhea's skin. This was how they had built the cage, not with iron, with files, doctors, reputation, statements signed in expensive ink. You would take her children, Rhea said. Evelyn looked away. Logan said nothing. That silence answered for all of them. The study door opened before Frank could speak again. Noah stood there. Elias was behind him, clutching his rabbit so tightly its worn ear bent in his fist. Clara stood at their backs, one hand lifted as if she had tried to stop them and failed. Noah's voice shook. Don't send Mommy away. Every adult in the room froze. Frank's face hardened. This is not a discussion for children. Elias stepped beside his brother. His eyes were wet, but he did not retreat. She stayed when I had bad dreams. Noah swallowed. She fixed my horse. Evelyn made a small distressed sound. Boys? She said sorry, Elias blurted. She says sorry now. That broke something in the room. Not loudly. Not visibly. But Logan flinched. Rhea saw it. For the first time, he looked at his sons as if he had heard them instead of merely noticing their presence. Noah's small hand found Rhea's skirt. Please don't let grandfather take her. Frank slammed the folder shut. Enough. Both boys recoiled. Rhea moved before she thought, stepping between them and Frank. Do not raise your voice at them. Frank's expression turned dangerous. You forget yourself. No, Rhea said. I think Amelia forgot herself for years. I'm remembering for her. Logan looked at her, strangely. There it was again. That flicker of uncertainty, of suspicion, of fear he could not name. Rhea turned to him. Look at them. He did not. Logan. His eyes moved to the twins. Noah's hand was still gripping Rhea's skirt. Elias's rabbit trembled against his chest. Two little boys stood in a room full of wealth, terrified that the only softness they had been given would be taken away for being inconvenient. "This is what your silence bought," Rhea said quietly. Logan's face changed. Not enough. But something moved. Frank pointed toward the door. "Clara, take them out." Clara did not move. For the first time since Rhea had entered the Mitchell house, Clara's voice did not tremble. "No." Frank stared at her. She lifted her chin. "If you send Amelia away from those boys, I will not stay quiet either." The room filled with the kind of silence that came before war. Rhea looked back at the folder on the desk. Then she thought of the dream. Of Amelia's face on the dark road. Of Daniel Freya coughing through the wall of a poor house that had more love than this mansion had ever held. She looked at Logan. "You built your career telling people they have choices," she said. "Maybe it's time you made one." In the village, Daniel Freya collapsed before noon. He'd been trying to carry a basin of water from the back step because stubbornness was sometimes the last pride left to a sick man. Amelia heard the crash from the kitchen and ran so fast she struck her hip against the table. Daniel was on the ground, breathing in broken pulls. "Dad," she gasped. The word came without hesitation now. Mrs. Duarte came running from next door. A neighbor brought the truck. Someone pressed a damp cloth to Daniel's forehead. Someone else held Amelia upright when she did not realize her legs were shaking. At the clinic, the doctor did not soften the truth enough. Daniel's condition had worsened. The transplant could not remain a hope written in Rhea's notebook. It had to become action soon, or it would become nothing at all. Amelia sat across from the doctor with Rhea's bruised hands folded in her lap and listened to numbers. Deposit. Compatibility testing. Transfer. Medication. Hospital fees. Every amount landed like dirt over a grave. The money she had recovered from Celia was not enough, not even close. Daniel slept behind a curtain afterward, oxygen whispering beside him. Amelia stood at the foot of the bed and watched him breathe. Rhea had nearly died chasing that money. Rhea had worked until her hands split. Rhea had loved one person so fiercely that it had become the shape of her entire life. And Amelia, who had once been surrounded by fortunes she was never allowed to control, knew exactly where money slept when rich people wanted to call greed charity. The Mitchell Foundation. The Emergency Medical Fund. The annual televised donation Logan liked to mention when guests on The Power of Choice cried under studio lights. Amelia knew the account names. She knew the board members. She knew which approvals were ceremonial and which signatures mattered. She knew Logan hated scandal more than he hated discomfort. For the first time, her old life became a weapon instead of a cage. She asked the nurse for Daniel's medical records. Then she asked for copies. The nurse frowned. "That may take time." "I don't have time," Amelia said. Something in her voice made the woman stop arguing. By evening, Amelia sat at Rhea's kitchen table with papers spread before her. Daniel's test results, hospital estimates, the partial money recovered, wrapped in cloth. Rhea's notebook opens to the page marked Transplant Fund. Mrs. Duarte stood behind her. "What are you planning?" Amelia looked at the numbers until they blurred. "A miracle," she said. Mrs. Duarte snorted. "Those are expensive." "Yes," Amelia whispered, "but I know someone who can afford one." That night, the dream came faster. There was no slow descent into darkness. One moment, Rhea sat beside the twins' bed while Elias slept with his hand wrapped around her finger. Amelia rested her head on Rhea's kitchen table, Daniel's records beneath her cheek. The next, both women stood on the road again. The olive tree waited on one side. The iron gates waited on the other. This time, they ran toward each other. They stopped just before the crack in the asphalt, close enough to see the fear they shared. "My father," Rhea asked. "Worse," Amelia said. "Alive, but worse. He needs the transplant soon." Rhea pressed a fist to her mouth. "I recovered some money," Amelia continued. "It isn't enough." "Then what do we do?" Amelia looked toward the iron gates. "We use the Mitchells." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "How?" "The foundation. Logan's show, his reputation." Amelia spoke quickly, as if a dream might tear apart at any second. "There is an emergency medical fund tied to his public charity. It exists because it photographs well. He can approve a grant if the board signs off, and the board signs off when Logan tells them to." "Why would he?" "Because you won't ask as Rhea." Amelia's voice hardened. "You will demand it as Amelia." Rhea understood slowly. "Not charity. Leverage." "The family tried to send you away today," Rhea said. Amelia closed her eyes. "Of course they did. They threatened the boys." Pain crossed Amelia's face. "Noah and Elias? They defended you." Amelia broke completely then, but silently. One hand covered her mouth. Her shoulders shook once. Rhea's anger softened against her will. "They need protection," Rhea said. "Not only comfort, something legal, something real." "In my writing desk," Amelia said quickly. "Bottom drawer, there is an old card for Beth Keller. She is an attorney. I met her after the boys were born. I was too afraid to call her again." "I'll call." "And don't confront Logan alone if you can avoid it. Make him afraid in public, not with screaming, with truth." Rhea almost smiled. "You learned that in the mansion?" "I learned it by surviving the mansion." The road trembled beneath them. The voice from the darkness did not speak this time, but both women felt it pressing closer. Borrowed time thinning? Amelia looked at Rhea across the crack in the road. "If we do this, we may find a way back." Rhea thought of Daniel calling her baby girl through another woman's mouth. Amelia thought of Elias asking if she would remember tomorrow. Neither woman spoke for a long moment. Then Rhea said, "Not yet." Amelia nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Not until Daniel is safe. Not until the twins are protected. And not until your life," Amelia whispered, "is not something I stole." Rhea reached across the break in the road. This time their fingers touched. The dream split with a sound like glass underwater. Rhea woke in the mansion with tears on Amelia's face, Noah asleep against her side and Elias's rabbit on her lap. Amelia woke in the village, with tears on Rhea's cheeks, Daniel's medical papers beneath her hand, and dawn pressing against the window. In two different worlds, both women sat up. Both whispered the same promise. Not yet. And somewhere between the olive tree and the iron gates, fate listened.
Heavy and the silence screams. Dreams feel so distant, torn at the seams. I'm walking a road that no one can see, carrying shadows that won't set me free. Every step I take feels like I might break, but the fire inside won't let me forsake. I hear the whispers of a voice deep within, telling me this isn't where my story ends. The weight of the world is pressing me down, but I won't let it bury me under the ground. Through the pain, through the ache, I'll find my way. Every scar, every tear will light my See the faces, their eyes full of doubt. They don't know shake with strain, but I'll rise again, I'll outrun the rain. The walls may close in and my heart might cry, but I'll carry these dreams till the day I die. Through the cracks in my armor, a light starts to gleam, a reminder that I'm more than they see. The weight of the world is pressing me down, but I won't let it bury me under the ground. Through the pain, through the ache, I'll find my way. Every scar, every tear will light my way. Oh, the nights are long and the days feel cold, but my story's worth more than the lies I've been told. I'll climb every mountain, I'll break every chain. The weight may be heavy, but I'll bear it again. The weight of the world is pressing me down, but I won't let it bury me under the ground. Through the pain, through the ache, I'll find my way. Every scar,